not planning on doing anything too wild. 6 deuce is certainly not good enough for any purposes. 8-4 could shove this in. I'll show you why. I'll plug it in to the old wizard here. Where were we? BB 200. 4-8 off. That's the badger. Yep, I could certainly jam it in here. We'll see the break-even point. That's probably the best way to do this. If he's calling under 30%, I can stack it in. Let's take a look at what 30% looks like. Around here, I think it's perfectly reasonable to expect him to call around here, given that he's the shorty and we're on the bubble and I have been very active. So in which case I make a perfectly acceptable fold. In fact, I don't fold. I take that back. I go with the old limp stab. That's proven very, very effective so far. I make second pair, definitely going to bet it. I could consider check calling to induce, but that looks a bit more suspicious. I mean, I do tend to bet flops. He calls here, so let's stop a second, analyse his range. King X for sure is a big part of his range. If he had a hand maybe like King 9, King 10 or better, he would probably consider raising. So weak kings, definitely an option there. We can rule out King 3. I'm sure he would raise 2 pair. King 4 would be bad news for us because then we'd be drawn to very few outs. But yeah, potentially King X, where the X isn't overly strong. 3X definitely in there. 8X definitely in there. Again, if it's 8X, not good news for me in that with the 3 on board, it's less likely that we're gonna chop. So my kicker may well play, or his kicker I should say, may well play if he does have 8X. So I'm going to proceed with a little bit of caution. As it is, there are also draws out there. He could have flush draw. He could just be floating one. See what I do on the turn because I have been active. Just going to check here. Just go into check call mode. He bets 300. If he'd shoved, I would have probably folded it. In fact, no, I wouldn't. If I would have called, if he shoved, because there'd be more. It would appear much more likely that he had a draw. But I'm happy that he just made it so small here, and I can check call. And bad river in that one of the hands that I was beating, i.e. 3x, now has suddenly leapfrogged me. But only way to play it is to check and see what he does. I would probably fold to a river jam, reasoning that I don't really want to double him up, and then all three of us are kind of tied around that 2,500 to 3,000 chip mark. So yeah, I'd probably fold, but at the same time there are enough busted draws out there for me to justify calling a jam. And he was actually just floating one on the flop with nothing, and turned the pair and value bet it as a weird blocker kind of odd value bet slash blocker bet slash bluff slash I don't know what on earth I'm doing, so I just better bet because I kind of think it looks kind of strong or something. I don't really know what he was up to there, but you could spend all your life as a sit-and-go player trying to analyse some of the peculiar plays that people come up with, and really you can boil it down to one thing. People just make odd plays sometimes. There is no rhyme nor reason to it. An awful lot of the time people just click buttons, and really realistically, as the shorty on the bubble versus the chip leader who's shown himself to be a half decent player, the chip leader is not your target here. He really shouldn't be looking to float and then pull moves on me on later streets. It doesn't make any sense, frankly. So if you're in Stick's position in future, be a bit more circumspect. Your target when you're the shorty on the bubble is the guy directly in front of you, i.e. the middle stack. It's not the chip leader, because the chip leader's chips aren't as valuable. Doubling through the chip leader, all that does is bring you a little closer to the pack, whereas if you double through the middle stack, you two swap positions, and that's just so much better for your tournament EV. So as it is, from my end, really happy to make a few chips here. And again, you'll notice I didn't let the pot size get too far away from me, given that we're at BB 200. It was only 7 BB. I did have second pair here, and we are in the bubble, so I could afford to press a little bit harder than I normally would, given that I'm the chip leader. Given that Sticks only has 5.5 BB here, I'd be happy to get it in against them with King 7 off. It's a strong hand. Also, I have extra fold equity in that there's Sticks will more likely fold a little wider once I open, given that there's an outside possibility that Christy and I will play an all-in pot. So I'm just going to go in with a min raise. I'll plug this into the wizard, see if it would be conceivable that I could stack it, but kind of no point. I'd expect it to be around here. Yeah, I could. I mean, we're getting towards that kind of territory. Maybe if he's calling 10s or better, yeah, we're looking at a break-even-y play. But I mean, it's not great to stack it in this wide when you could definitely get away with a min raise. Bear in mind, Christy has not been playing back at us, or the only time he has played a pot with us, I believe, was one cheap defend in the early stages, and he just check folded. So no need to use a big mallet when you can just get away with a lighter touch and just come in with a wee min raise there, get this exact same result, and the downside is a lot less. Okay, Stick stacks, Christy folds. I'm sitting here with Queen 9 suited. Let's plug this one in. I'm going to go ahead and say you should call here, because Sticks has been the more active player. I don't think he's shoving as wide as 47%. But let's plug it in, see where the break-even point is. So if he's shoving more than about 23%, it becomes a positive EV call, about 22%, something like that. Becomes a positive EV call. But I'm looking for a bit more than that, because look at how long it becomes just marginally positive EV here. Kind of between 20 and 30%. And it's not until he's shoving over well into the 30s that it becomes a far better call for me. So we'll take a look at what those ranges look like. Let's bring this into view for you. So as you can see, really need to be stacking it kind of this wide for it to be a break-even-y call. I think he is, though. I think he's stacking it wider. I'll give you what a guy with 5 and a bit BB who's not a total nit, and with the blinds just about to come through, I expect him to be jamming, yeah, certainly over 40% of hands anyway. At which point it's a very comfy call. So you can see here, I assume I did call. I would certainly expect myself to make that call all day long. So, and I do, and I lose. He had A7, but even then I'm drawing certainly very live. What have I got? Like certainly over 40% equity against that hand, about 44% or something. So all is not lost. Now Christy opens for one of the very first times in this whole tournament. Now he is the middle stack, so I do believe that I do believe that versus the middle stack, I have more fold equity than you'd think. But the flip side of that is Christy's just played this tournament like a massive nit. So his opening range is way stronger than most people's opening range in this spot. He is middle stack on the bubble, and I have been very active, so I do think that ordinarily he's going to be very tight here, but he is playing especially tight. As such, I think that this Ace-10 is dominated by his range a lot. If I rejam, I'll probably fold out Ace-Jack, but I don't think there's much chance that I fold out a hand like Ace-King, Ace-Queen here. I don't really want to flip either. I doubt he folds a hand like 9s, so it's going to be really gross, really thin. It's very close. His open range, I anticipate, is somewhere about 25%, less even. He's going to raise every pair, but at the same time, probably fewer of these weak Ace-X hands. The range with which he'll call a rejam, yeah, maybe something like this. But I'm not overly happy with this being his opening range. I think there'll be more I think there'll be more pairs, but fewer of the crappy aces that I dominate here. So at best, it's going to be very thin positive EV play. At worst, it's a disaster because I'm completely dominated. So I actually make the very atypical play here and just flat call, decide to see a flop. And my reasoning, I think, is very sound here. And that is, well, first of all, I have concerns about his range. But more than that, there are issues with, I believe that I'll be able to take him off certain flops, certain dry flops. I think when he doesn't have a pair, I'm certainly going to be able to take him off a better ace-high hand. So I flop the world, which is great news. Check to him. And he bets, what's that, 600? I'm just going to click it back here. I could just check call. I think that looks pretty suspicious. A click back is as good as a check shove here. Basically the same thing. But it could look a bit more like a misclick. So click it back, let him stack it in. Pocket deuces. So as you can see, I mean, he might have folded this pre-flop to my rejam. He might not have. I just can't make that assumption, given that he committed so much of his stack. But he does appear to be a glass half empty type of guy, so I think I probably would have folded it out pre-flop, but you never know. So don't want to get too far into the heads up here. As you can see, a few hands later, I mean, I've run very well in this tournament. I stack it in for like 9 or 10 BB with pocket threes, and win the flip and take it down. So pretty happy with how that tournament went, but that's not the crucial thing. The real crucial thing is how I grew my stack without doing anything too outrageous. Sure, I ran pretty well, won the big all-in confrontations, but at no point was I behind and needing to suck out. And I did grow my stack by and large just by manoeuvring pretty deftly post-flop. That's the way to do it. People have asked me, how do you grow your stack? How do you play the big stack? How do you take advantage of your opponents? Well, this way it was pretty circumspect. It wasn't like I was hugely OTT or anything, but at the same time, when I did play the big all-in pots, I made sure I had it. If you think back to the flush, if you think back to the ace-queen hand, if you think back to the trips with ace-10. So pretty happy with how that went. Okay, I'll leave it here for this week and wish you all the best of luck at the tables. This is Casey151 for DragtheBar.com. Bye bye.